Number 10. Dragons. Dragons have been part of mythology for a while, but they've also been a part of Christian legends. St. George himself, apparently he slayed a dragon. I can't even paintball and this man took down a biblical dragon. Revelation 22, it reads, "And he seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. 1,000 years? I feel like we needed more time than 1,000 years. I don't know. What year is it again? We're due for a couple of dragons. Sleep in fear.
Coming in at number 9, the blue glaucus. Often described as a tiny little water dragon, the blue glaucus is actually a nudibranch. The bright blue side that is often shown in photos is actually their belly side. They tend to float on their backs as the blue side camouflages them within the water and protects them from sky predators like birds and such. But what is truly nuts about these tiny 1-inch creatures is their ability to sting, and sting hard. They essentially swallow and store the stinging cells from SIPHONOPHORES, another creature we will get to later on, and then these stinging cells remain in the blue glaucus, concentrating over time. When the time comes and they feel threatened, it will release these stinging cells, delivering an incredibly potent sting that can cause its victim to experience a slew of painful and uncomfortable symptoms. So it's not that they are poisonous or venomous themselves necessarily. Technically, they can just store poison and then shoot it out when the time is right, which I say is probably even more terrifying.
Number 8. Giants. Mentioned in Samuel 17:158. And there came out from the camp a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits at a span. I'm 6'2", I don't know what that means, but that's pretty tall. He had a helmet of bronze on his head and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. Spoiler alert, Goliath fell to David, but there's a race of giants called the Amorites, and well, they stepped in a bit. They're actually mentioned more than 80 times in the Bible. One description mentioned in Amos 2:9-10 paints quite the picture. Yet it was I who destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was the height of the cedars, and he was as strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit above and his roots beneath. Also it was I who brought you up from the land of Egypt, and led you 40 years through the wilderness to possess the land of the Amorite. That is quite the description. If somebody were to describe me, they'd be like, ah yes, Taylor, the height of that bush, and the strength also of that bush. Number 7. 4 beasts of Daniel. 4 beasts, that's a lot of beasts. It's like a foreign one here. The first was like a lion and it had eagle wings. Quote, that as I watched, its wings were plucked off and I was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a human being. And a human mind was then given to it. Daniel 7:4. Yep, that sounds like a pretty intimidating thing to see. These entities are described as a lion with eagle wings, and there's also a bear, there's also a leopard, and this 4th beast that's still a complete mystery. So there you go, fill in the blanks yourself. The bear has 3 ribs in its mouth also, between its teeth. It's very scary to look at. The leopard also has wings as well as 4 heads. So it's like 8 beasts in total. It's like 8, we got like 13 now. How many heads are we counting here? Heads or bodies? Like how are we counting them? The mysterious 4th beast is apparently full of horns, and it's got iron teeth and 10 horns protruding out from it. So it's full of horns and it's got more horns. All the horns. The beast symbolizes the great 4 kingdoms, but the ribs and the teeth thing, that's gonna be in my head rent free. That's really scary. Number 6. The Nephilim. The Nephilim are demigods. They were described, of course, as being gigantic in size, and in Genesis 6:1-4, they're mentioned as such. When people began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they had chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in immortals forever, for they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years. Again, awfully high, maybe 80s, that's okay with me. 120, I don't want to limp to my death. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans, who bore children to them. So these sons of God, these fallen ones, many believe are not the greatest. They're fallen sons like Lucifer, that kind of thing, you know what I mean? Number 1333, there's a passage that says, and there we saw the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. Yeah, giants, we're grasshoppers, with Lucifer in the picture, no thanks. I've never felt smaller, if I'm being honest, or scared. Number 5. The Leviathan. Isaiah 27:1, quote, in that day the Lord will punish Leviathan the fleeing serpent with his fierce and great and mighty sword, even Leviathan the twisted serpent, and he will kill the dragon who lives in the sea. Yeah, we're talking about sea monsters now. This one has more than one head, again, as do most on this list. The Leviathan is a beast of chaos, specifically. It was defeated at the hands of God, and once upon a time, Sir Humphrey Gilbert saw a beast in the sea that had a lion's head. What do you know? Could it be? Many biblical verses mention said Leviathan. I will not fail to speak of Leviathan's limbs, its strength and its graceful form. Who can penetrate its double coat of armor? Who dares open the doors of its mouth, ringed about with fearsome teeth? Its back has rows of shields tightly sealed together. Yeah, if this was a boss in Zelda, I wouldn't win this battle. This is I've never heard something described so fiercely in my entire life. Number 4. The first beast. Welcome. Told you we'd do it. Number 4. You won't believe it. Let's do it. We talked about the second beast, so, in Quentin Tarantino fashion, we gotta do the first one afterwards, get you caught up. The first one, literally, the first beast, is referred to in Revelation 13:1-2. And I stood upon the sands of the sea, and I saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. There's actually 2 of these monsters. This one has 7 heads and 10 horns. This beast was once a great king, but before it could rule, it was cast into perdition. There's many who believe that this first beast is a literal antichrist. Number 3. Vampires. Remember when Edward said to Bella in the woods, "Say it." And then she's like, "Vampire." That and Robin Williams' Jack, both really emotional on the soul. Well, it turns out vampires were real. Vampires were mentioned in around 50 verses from the Bible. Now, of course, this is an ongoing argument because, well, obviously we want to know if they're real, but the verse goes as such. There are those whose teeth are swords, whose fangs are knives, and they're to devour the poor from the earth, the needy from among mankind. Now, many believe, of course, it's not actual capes floating and turning into a bat vampire, and rather just the wealth of the people that's being devoured, But I don't know. Sea monsters, locusts, multiple heads with multiple horns. I don't know. It sounds like vampires would be the least of our concerns. Number 2. Plagues. We grew up studying medieval plagues, but did we ever imagine that we'd live through one like we did the past few years? Who could have predicted any of that? Why, the Bible. Of course, it was there all along. That's why we're here, right? Does it hold any clues to our impending doom? Has it been right before? Revelation 6 and Matthew 24 both foresee this pandemic hitting before the return of one Jesus Christ. So, I don't know. Maybe there's a silver lining. And he's got an excellent beard. He's due to arrive any minute now. And finally, number 1. Locusts. We saw these in 2016, just floating about. God, that was terrifying. This is Revelation 9:3-10. The Bible is home to some strange events, otherwise, terrifying. And then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. In appearance, the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold, and their faces were like human faces. Well, that's terrifying. That's a scary, scary passage. I'm not coming for your beliefs in any way, shape, or form in this entire video, but that is jarring to imagine. Don't sin or you'll get locusts with human faces sent to fly your way. Awesome. Among the 10 plagues in the Bible, this one sounds like it's perhaps the worst because, well, I don't like bugs. 5 months of torment caused by pit locusts. This could happen. I'm not trying to alarm anybody, but back in 2016, locusts covered over 270,000 square miles in Russia. Just out of nowhere, just hundreds of thousands of locusts. Now, none of them had human faces, but it still sucked nonetheless.
Starting us off at number 10, Julia. In 2008, Dr. Richard Gallagher, a psychiatrist and professor at the New York Medical College, revealed a haunting case of demonic possession. Now, it is a little unusual for a medical professional to be the backer, as usually they are prone to associate the symptoms with mental health disorders, but Julia was a special case. Dr. Gallagher said she would change her voice drastically out of nowhere, from a high-pitched squeal to a deep, manly guttural sound. She was known to speak in tongues and reveal personal knowledge about others in the room that had never been divulged to her. Often she would levitate off the ground and was even able to throw objects across the room with her mind. At a loss for what to do, Dr. Gallagher even attempted calling in a priest to perform an exorcism, but this made matters even worse, as it clearly bothered the entity possessing Julia, with the demon saying they will be sorry for their actions to try and get rid of it. Apparently, Julia continues to display signs of possession to this day and terrifies all that try to fix her condition. Next up at number 9, Clara Germana Seeley. In 1906, a South African girl began terrifying her family after one fateful night when she was allegedly possessed by a demonic entity. Now, no one knows just what happened that night, but the next day she began to exhibit superhuman strength and throwing nuns around the room with a simple flick of her wrist, while making inhuman noises. Clara would speak in languages she was not known to have any knowledge of, and after a 2-day exorcism where she floated several feet in the air and attempted to strangle the priest, she was finally freed from the demon. Let's just hope that the demon died and didn't get passed along to anyone else. Next up at number 8, sleepless nights. The year was 2011, the time was 3 a.m., and this Reddit user was lying in bed when out of nowhere they lost complete control of their limbs. They could speak, they could see, but their body was being jerked around all over the place. They said their feet and fingers were tapping, shoulders couldn't stop shrugging, and when they asked into the empty room if anyone was there, their right hand raised into the air and gave a thumbs up. With no control to stop it, they just laid there hoping and praying the demon would leave their body. And luckily for whoever this was, by morning whatever had possessed them seemed to be gone for good. Let's just hope that whatever it was doesn't come back with a vengeance. Coming in at number 7, Sleep Talker. While some seem to have chalked up this haunting encounter to sleep talking, Reddit user Adventure Time believes he was possessed and has no recollection. He says his girlfriend told him she awoke just before 3 a.m. because he wouldn't stop picking up his head to look out the window. When she asked him what was wrong, all he said was to go back to sleep. He was speaking in a strange voice unlike his own, and when she asked him things like when was his birthday or his parents' names, he couldn't answer. His girlfriend asked if he was going to hurt her, to which he replied no, but when asked if he would protect her, he stayed silent, creeping her out even further. She detailed that her boyfriend kept repeating that all would be done at 3 a.m. and just as promised, as soon as the clock struck 3, he went right to sleep with no memory of the haunting event, but truly terrified that whatever it was that possessed him that night might just return, and this time might not be so kind. Coming in at number 6, the Green Aura Man. Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis? It's this awful phenomenon where essentially you are fully awake and conscious but unable to move or speak. And if that wasn't bad enough, some experience what has been coined as a sleep paralysis demon. And one Reddit user claims that she was possessed by one of those very entities. At 3 a.m., the demon with a green aura smiled at her, and then suddenly she began to feel very angry. The anger lasted days, and she began to feel violent towards her boyfriend. When she went to tell her boyfriend she needed help, she heard the spirit speak to her saying, "You wanted to see me, so here I am. Look at me." She apparently sought out the help from her grandmother, but nothing else about her is known. Was she able to free herself from the demon, or does she remain trapped and possessed to this day? Coming in at number 5, a real-life Annabelle. Like something out of a horror movie, this husband and wife paranormal investigation team claims that they have a Raggedy Ann doll that is possessed. Their wild claim came after video surveillance footage from 3 in the morning showed the doll moving out of its display cabinet and flipping over a Ouija board. Lee and Lindsay run a museum of haunted objects from their home, and while there, Lindsay has felt things grab her by the neck and even witnessed objects flying across the room. The doll, which they acquired in 2019, is an identical copy of the notorious Annabelle doll from the 1970s that's inspired the Conjuring series, and they believe their doll to be possessed, just as that one is believed to be. According to the couple, after they received the doll, they were in a nearly fatal car crash, and on a separate occasion, Lindsay was hospitalized for nearly a week with doctors having no clue what was wrong with her. Sounds to me like they have a demon living in their house, so let's just hope they can get rid of it before it's too late. Coming in at number 4, the PERRON family. This family was actually the inspiration for the Conjuring series, but sadly their fate is much darker than the films. Just like any good horror movie, it all started with a beautiful, too good to be true house. After only a few nights there, the mother, Carolyn, began seeing the ghost of a woman who had taken her own life in the house and became very afraid. The family decided to enlist the help of paranormal investigators who came to perform a seance, but unfortunately things took a turn when they uncovered the dark history of their home. Previously it was owned by a witch who sacrificed her firstborn to Satan and then took her own life to complete the ritual, and then out of nowhere, Caroline became possessed by the spirit, writhing and screaming while her whole family watched in horror. Allegedly, the investigators tried to exorcise the demon out of the mother, but unfortunately were not able to, and the father kicked them out of the house. Unable to move due to financial constraints, the family remained and were haunted for the next several years by the demonic entity, scarring them for life. Coming in at number 3, camping trip disaster. Now, no names were mentioned for this story, so to make it easier, I'm gonna make them up. One night on a camping trip with a few other friends, one friend, let's call her Megan, witnessed what she can only describe as a demonic possession. After a long day, the group got ready for bed and all climbed into their tent. Megan awoke in the middle of the night to find one of her friends, let's call her Sarah, standing up in the corner of the tent, slapping her arms hysterically to her sides in a trance-like state, while maniacally laughing and crying simultaneously. Sarah began to examine her body like she'd never seen it before, and Megan, creeped out, tried to ignore it and went back to sleep. The next morning all seemed to be fine, but that night things got creepy again. Sarah and Megan were out for a walk when Megan witnessed the switch in her eyes as she creepily smiled at her and said, "I'm not listening," before crawling around on all fours and taunting Megan the whole night. Terrified, Megan ran away before the demon could get to her, and although she has remained in contact with Sarah, trying to get her help, she refuses to see her in person since the horrifying weekend. Next up at number 2, Robbie Mannheim. Robbie Mannheim was actually the real-life inspiration for The Exorcist. In the 1930s, when Robbie was just 13 years old, he decided he wanted to contact his deceased aunt. Now, he made 2 very bad decisions. 1, he did so in the middle of the night, and 2, he used a Ouija board. Now, not long after his 3 a.m. seance, strange things started happening to Robbie. Furniture would dart across the house, religious art on the walls would vibrate or fall when he walked by, and classmates even reported his desk flying across the room. Priests eventually agreed to perform an exorcism on the boy, but the demon was not so keen to leave. Allegedly, he attacked the priests with superhuman strength when they tried to free him of the spirit, but thankfully the priests won this one and the demon was expelled. So, moral of the story is, stop messing around with Ouija boards, especially if it's the middle of the night. You might not be as lucky as Robbie. And last up, in our number 1 spot, Michael Taylor. Back in 1974, a beloved family man without any previous criminal history seemed to suddenly change overnight into a different person. After the fateful night, he was all of a sudden flirting with a woman at his church, and after she turned him down, he became extraordinarily violent. It was so out of character for Michael that the church decided to exorcise him, believing that he was possessed. They strapped him down and allegedly exorcised a whopping 40 demons from his body, but it would turn out that that wasn't enough, as still 3 demons remained inside him. That night, Michael brutally killed and dismembered his wife and dog, and upon being arrested, told the police he was possessed by a force compelling him to destroy everything living within his house. He was sent to a psychiatric facility, but it seems like those last 3 demons remained attached to the man for the rest of his life.
Number 10. NASA hacked. So first off, how do things like this from NASA even manage to get leaked? Well, apparently by British guys like Gary McKinnon hacking into their system. Between the years 2001 and 2002, Gary broke into 97 different government computers, believing NASA was hiding signs of alien life because of thousands of pictures of UFOs he found hidden away. A former NASA employee had said that satellite images were checked for UFOs and deleted if they showed any evidence, and Gary decided he wanted to break into NASA in order to validate these claims. He says that he found 4 different folders titled Filtered, Unfiltered, Processed, and Raw. He says that his slow internet connection only made him able to download 1 image before he lost access to the rest of them, the picture apparently being a clear image of a cigar-shaped spacecraft. Gary believes that NASA is hiding a wealth of UFO evidence from the public. Number 9. Edgar Mitchell. Astronaut Edgar Edgar Mitchell landed on the moon with the Apollo 14 mission, and he also believed that aliens helped prevent a conflict between the United States and Russia. He claimed that top military officials were hiding evidence of unidentified flying objects, and the fact that they were apparently often spotted hovering over White Sands testing range in New Mexico. In 2015, he said, "White Sands was a testing ground for atomic weapons, and that's what the extraterrestrials were interested in. They wanted to know about our military capabilities. My own experience talking to people has made it clear the ETs had been attempting to keep us from going to war and help create peace on Earth." He stated that the military had given him loads of information on aliens and their interactions with Earth, and after he left NASA, he dedicated his life and studies to looking into extraterrestrial existence. Number 8. Mars photos. A man named Richard Hoagland believes that NASA knows a lot more about Mars than they're letting on. He believes that astronauts have been to Mars and that there's a plethora of evidence of alien life on Mars that NASA is insistent on covering up. During the Viking 1 orbit in 1976, NASA released various photographs of the surface of Mars, and some of them seemed to show various different structures and one that apparently even looked like the Sphinx. This led people to believe that these structures had been built by aliens who lived on the Red Planet. Years later, in 1998, NASA took more pictures to debunk the theory, showing only rocks, but Richard and others believe that this is them trying to hide the truth and shrinking the structures that were previously on the planet. He also pulled up a NASA commissioned report from 1960 that recommended any future discoveries of alien life be hidden from the public so as not to disrupt the evolutionary flow of the century. Number 7. Sun object. Last video I talked about NASA cutting off their ISS feed when people believed that they saw a UFO falling towards the Earth. This one is a similar scenario, except it came from footage of the sun. In May of 2012, a YouTube user posted a video of a mysterious object seen flying near the sun in NASA's broadcast. The video zooming in on the pyramid-shaped object that many believe to be some sort of alien craft flying near the sun. A day later, NASA shut down the video feed. In a second video, the user said, "This is a cover-up to prevent us from seeing these things again. NASA must have seen this video and started making plans to change the way you and I are allowed to view it. NASA are clearly trying to stop us looking at the sun." Alien deniers may say that this is just some sort of camera glitch or sun flare, but I think we all know the truth. People telling you not to look at the sun is actually just propaganda so we don't see the aliens. And I'm just gonna say quickly for legal reasons that I do not actually condone staring into the sun. Number 6. The cube. This also isn't the only case of NASA cutting off the sun livestream after suspicious activity. It happened just this year in May as well. On May 2nd at around 1 in the afternoon, a large black cube appeared to come out of the sun, visible for about 2 seconds. A glitch then appeared on the live stream covering a large part of it, and after it clears, the cube is gone. An expert posted this to YouTube going over the footage and claims that this is evidence of some sort of alien spaceship coming out of the sun. Perhaps they have a secret alien base in there. Also, I say expert because he is a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, and honestly, I'm gonna start calling myself that as well. You guys are watching a video from an expert now, people. Most people in the comments claim that this was just some sort of square-shaped solar flare, while another even claimed it was the manifestation of an angel gaining power from the sun. Number 5. Evidence scale. This one is not so much leaked, but was instead part of an announcement that NASA was going to become more serious about trying to discover life on other planets. They announced that they are going to have a scale to measure extraterrestrial evidence so that it's not as black and white as life or no life. Proposed by NASA Chief Scientist Jim Green, the scale includes 7 different levels, which ranks evidence of life based on their environment and the opinions of the scientific community at large. The highest levels on the scale are of course level 6, verifying signs of life with several different instruments, and level 7, and on different locations on the world. They said in a statement, "We need a better way to share the excitement of our discoveries and demonstrate how each discovery builds on the next, so that we can bring the public and other scientists along on the journey. This new eagerness Anonymous to bring people along on the journey of discovery could be a sign that they're warming us up to revealing aliens. Number 4. Meteorite. In 2011, a NASA scientist came out claiming that they had found legitimate evidence of alien life. This being from fossils inside a meteorite that landed on Earth. Richard Hoover said that he found evidence of what is basically microscopic little alien bugs, or as the science people call it, filaments and other structures that appear to be fossils of algae known as cyanobacteria, little alien bugs. Laboratory tests done found no evidence that they were the remains of Earth-based organisms, despite being slightly similar to organisms that have been found in the waterways of Spain. Hoover says that the lack of nitrogen, which is essential for life on Earth, proves that they are the remains of extraterrestrial life forms that grew on the parent bodies of the meteorites when liquid water was present, long before the meteorites entered the Earth's atmosphere. This isn't the first time that this sort of evidence has been found on meteorites, and it probably won't be the last. Number 3. Anonymous. We know that the infamous Gary McKinnon managed to hack into the NASA databases and find secret UFO pictures, but did you know that the group known as Anonymous did it as well? In 2017, they made a 12.5-minute long YouTube video where they claimed to have gained access to secret NASA information, telling people that NASA was covering up the discovery of alien life. They said that the organization had recently found 219 new planet candidates, 10 having very similar conditions to Earth. Because of this, the group came to believe that NASA was either incredibly close to finding alien life or had already found it. They also stated that this was a sign NASA was getting closer and closer to revealing the truth about aliens. And while many people brushed it off as being ridiculous, we now know that NASA has just revealed their new UFO study, so Anonymous may have been closer to the truth than we thought. Number 2. Black Knight Satellite. Alright, now let's get into some stuff that is a little more conspiratorial than usual, if that's even possible, and various different ways that people believe NASA is trying to cover stuff up, but apparently not doing a good enough job. There is a conspiracy that there is a satellite called the Black Knight Satellite, which was set up by aliens more than 12,000 years ago in order to spy on humans. Photos from the first shuttle trip to the International Space Station in 1998 appeared to show a large black object hovering over Earth, and people believed it was the first photographic evidence of the Black Knight satellite. All previous evidence from years before were just things like radio signals. They also believed that back in the early 1900s, Nikola Tesla actually picked up signals from the Black Knight. Whether or not you actually believe in the existence of the satellite spying on us apparently doesn't matter anymore, as it was reportedly shot down by the Illuminati in 2017. Number 1. Hollow Earth. Alright, this one's not so much about aliens, but trust me on this, I am a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, okay? In 2016, one YouTube user suggested that NASA was trying to cover up the existence of something at the North and South poles. Old satellite images of Earth from space appear to apparently show some sort of a massive hole at each end of the Earth, what they claim to be an entrance. If you're not sold on the flat Earth theory, then let me introduce you to Hollow Earth. As its name suggests, the truth is apparently that the inside of the Earth is hollow and actually contains inner Earth complete with its own sun. Explorers have apparently seen the inner Earth firsthand when flying over the North Pole. So this is just a cool, crazy conspiracy, and it doesn't actually really relate to aliens, but I just wanted to talk about it. So as an alien expert, I'm just gonna say that the inner Earth is actually where all the aliens live, and they control us from the inside.
Starting us off at number 10, the immortal jellyfish. Yes, you heard that correctly, and no, it's not quite what you would expect. It turns out that if you want to live forever, all you need to do is be reincarnated as this specific species of jellyfish. But before you get too excited, while they never technically die, they don't continue aging either. Essentially, after the jellyfish has reproduced, they revert back to a polyp stage and repeat that cycle over and over and over and over again. for eternity. To put it simply, they pretty much turn back into babies again. Like, actually, how is that possible? As far as scientists can tell, the only way for them to die is to literally be eaten or catch a deadly disease. But as long as they steer clear of those threats, they will quite literally live forever.
Number 9. The second beast. Yeah, I know. I'll get to the first one later. You know how we do it here on YouTube. You won't believe number 4. Know what I mean? Revelation 13:11. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon, causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. So there were a lot of witnesses. I'm sure that was quite jarring for every party involved. Also, it causes everybody, both small and great, rich and poor alike, you'll be marked by this demon. You'll be marked on your right hand or your forehead so that no one can buy or sell from you unless, they get rid of that mark. That's the name of the beast, or the number of its name. Revelation 13:16.
Next up at number 8, the mysterious whalefish. Back in 1895, 2 scientists discovered a fish in the deep sea that they named whalefish for its resemblance to the other animal. Then fast forward a few decades, and in 1956, a scientist discovered another new kind of fish in the deep sea, the tape tail. Finally, in 1966, scientists added one more new fish to the list, named the big nose. But something wasn't adding up. No matter how hard they looked, they could only ever find juvenile tape tails, female whalefish, and male big noses. Where were all the others? Well, finally in 2003, they discovered something incredible, that they were actually all in the same family. But because they literally all looked so incredibly different, it never occurred to them upon each initial discovery. Sometimes nicknamed the shapeshifting fish, these strange creatures change so much from larva to adulthood that they are entirely unrecognizable and frankly should not be possible. Coming in at number 7, the mantis shrimp. These tiny little creatures look like something from a science fiction novel, and they certainly act like one too. Mantis shrimp, though not shrimp or mantis, are divided into 2 categories: smashers and spearers. Smashers have a crazy strong club appendage that can literally bludgeon their prey to death or break aquarium glass if they're in the mood, whereas spearers have a barbed tip, spiny appendage they will use to stab their prey. But their big claim to fame is that they are actually thought to have the most complex eyes in all of the animal kingdom. To give you a bit of context, humans have 3 types of photoreceptor cells in our eyes, and the mantis shrimp can possess anywhere from 12 to 16, meaning that they can essentially see colors that are literally not able to be perceived by other species. I mean, how insane is that? Next up at number 6, the thorny devil. Native to the land of Australia, it should come as no shocker that these creatures are out of this world. I mean, that is kind of the Australian calling card after all. For starters, they are literally covered from head to toe in giant spikes. I mean, they practically look like a mace. But at the nape of their neck is also this huge bulge that acts as their false head. So if they get attacked, they will bow their head down to reveal their false head and keep their real one safe. That's not the insane part though. So if they continue to feel threatened and the predator continues to attack, a thorny devil's defense is to actually shoot blood from their eyes. I kid you not. I mean, talk about a party trick. But seriously, that should not be possible, right? I'll just be thankful that that is not something humans can pull off yet. Coming in at number 5, geoducks. These definitely have a certain look to them that I am sure we can all agree on, and I won't lie, that was definitely a factor in me adding them to the list. But aside from looking rather stallion-like, if you will, these clams also live to be crazy old. I'm talking 140 to 180 years old. You'd think if something had to live that long, they would at least get to see cool stuff, but that was not the plan for these kooky things. Instead, they remain in literally one spot their entire lives. Geoducks will ground themselves with a small foot and remain several feet below ground, eating plankton and pretty much minding their own business until they either die or are farmed. Next up at number 4, the platypus. Of course, I had to add this weirdo creature to the list. We know it, we love it, and we will be eternally confused by it. Scientists still have a really hard time figuring out how to categorize the platypus, although officially they have decided on mammal, which, I mean, we'll do, I guess. But truthfully, there is nothing else like it. It lays eggs like a chicken, but it still produces milk for its young. It has a bill, like a duck, that is loaded with sensors that can detect a worm's electrical field, but then it hits you with webbed feet and a beaver tail. Like, what are we supposed to do with that? Oh, and lest we forget, the venomous spurs on the rear ankles of the males. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of what a 4-year-old may have drawn their imaginary friend to look like, not an actual living, breathing animal on planet Earth. But hey, the Earth is full of things that don't make sense, so what's another thing on the list? Coming in at number 3, the axolotl. Put aside the fact that these amphibians are strangely adorable, they also defy any and all logical understanding of biology. For starters, they are the only amphibians that don't undergo metamorphosis, which is why they retain their baby-like features as well as their external gills in their adulthood. But most incredibly and mind-boggling is that they can actually regenerate nearly every limb or organ in their body in a matter of months. I'm talking arms, legs, tail, heart, eyes, even certain tissues in their nervous system. So quite literally, say its leg gets ripped from the body, rather than scarring, the axolotl will just grow a new one. And in some cases, it's even been known to repair a damaged limb and grow an additional one. They are quite a popular pet among exotic animal lovers. Coming in at number 2, SIPHONOPHORES. These creatures blew my mind when I was making up this list for you guys. Think of them less like one entity and more like a community of organisms that all live together. Essentially, a bunch of different multicellular units, each with specialized functions, but each with their own nervous system, joined together to create a colony that can reproduce, digest, float, and move. They live in the deep sea, and so far there are 175 known species. And if the whole suburban cul-de-sac organism entity thing isn't cool enough for you, they are also bioluminescent, so they literally glow. Not only that, but they are one of only 2 known life forms in the entire world that are known to produce a red light, as most produce blue or green. And coming in at number 1, the floppy snake. Similarly to the gooey duck, the floppy snake has a very distinct appearance, having been dubbed by some on the internet as a manaconda. Although it's called a snake, it's not really a snake, but an amphibian with rings like an earthworm. But what is truly impossible to understand about this creature is that it has no lungs. The floppy snake will breathe through its skin. Capillaries fill their skin, which permits an exchange of gas, and voila! To top it off, it has terrible eyesight and sealed nostrils, yet it is still able to smell. Experts have literally said that there is no clear understanding on how the floppy snake survives, but yet here we are. It is here and it is alive, so who am I to question it?